On the 6th of June 1944, Operation Neptune began, and the largest sea-borne invasion ever undertaken took place on the shores of northern France. 80 years later, to commemorate this momentous event, the Airfix Collectors Club kit is this. The 172nd D-Day duo, comprised of a Hawker Typhoon and a Supermarine Spitfire Photo Reconnaissance Mark 19 in the colours that they would have worn on that fateful day. I've already done an unboxing for what's inside here, which should be appearing in a link above me now, but for this video we're going to be building both of these kits. Viewer discretion advised. This video will see me, a grown man, ranting about what is essentially small bits of plastic, and therefore may not be suitable for those with a weak constitution. Thank you. Well, with the health and safety notice out the way, let's crack on with the builds. And I'm starting with the Typhoon simply because it is first in the instructions, and here is a little bit of data about this tooling. So 2013, 74 parts, and the price is based on the 2024 recommended retail price of a Series 2 kit. Naturally, being the club edition, this particular example is only available if you join the members club and happen to live in the UK. Construction, of course, begins with the interior, and we have some detail in there, nothing significant, but it's good enough, and the whole thing is painted with the Hataka interior grey-green. One comment I just want to make about the entire kit is that this is in the darker grey plastic that Airfix use these days, and whilst I prefer that formula of plastic, I think it feels much nicer to cut and work with, there's a bit of flash and just general kind of loss of definition on this kit, which I think is an indication that it has maybe made quite a few models. This has been around for just over a decade and has been available in a few different forms, including starter or gift sets as they now call them, so I imagine they've probably produced quite a lot of these, and the moulds are definitely showing some signs of wear. How do I know this? Well, as I mentioned in the unboxing, I do actually have one of the previous standard releases of this kit from 2019, and I compared the two. In fact, I built the two together, spoiler for another video, but yeah, they're a little bit just lacking definition, a little bit worn. Anyway, everything painted green. The floor, it's not really a floor, it's just these sort of strips on the bottom wing with the control column and rudder pedals. That forms some of the interior, and the rest of it is suspended between the two fuselage halves. A little bit fiddly if you're not familiar with that sort of style, but as you can see here, if you line it up nicely, you can definitely get a good finish. One thing that I would just like to advise, if you are used to something like the newer Hawker Tempest from Airfix, where they tell you to slide the front in and fit it in there, that does not work here. You very much need to follow the instructions and put one fuselage half over that bit and then the other fuselage half. You can't just slide it in. The single interior decal goes on the plastic instrument panel. It has raised detail, which means the decal doesn't fit as nicely as if it were smooth, but hey, not too bad. And then this is having the rockets drilled out, so you must remember to drill out holes for either rockets or bombs based on the example that you're going for. It gives you 8 holes each wing for the rockets and 2 each wing for the bombs, and 245 Squadron were equipped with rockets in June 1944, so that's what I've gone for. And then a general wash was applied to everything inside using the usual Citadel's Basilisk Anus or whatever that I use for everything, just liberally applied, and then some of it splodged off. The interior is not going to be that visible in this aircraft. It's an impression of an interior rather than anything solid, just because of the lack of room through the canopy, lack of visibility. But still, I'd like to give it a little bit of a wash. Don't forget to put the tail wheel in at this point as well. Gives you the option for down or up, which is just a little stopper on the side of the fuselage. You either put it down or you put it up, and this will have the undercarriage down, so it goes to the vertical stopper like this. And then we can work on bringing the entire interior together. So the seat, as you've seen, is already suspended to one fuselage half, but the interior panel bit, instrument panel bit, you know what I mean, goes in there. Had to be very careful to get it to line up by using both fuselage halves not glued together. And then, as described earlier, the interior floor piece, chin, radiator thing, mess goes in very carefully to not break it. I've had a problem with this before. I say I've had a problem. I was rubbish on the only attempt I made at this kit beforehand, and I broke the control stick. This time, being the second and third versions of this kit I've made, I managed to get it in, and it looks fine. Funny how just following the instructions and carefully dry fitting and just doing better can get better results. Who would have thunk it, eh? The fuselage can then be glued together, making sure to put in this, it's a flap, is it a cowl of some sort for the radiator? Not sure. Either way, I glued it closed because it looked better closed. I didn't think it had enough detail to really be open. But I put that in just at that point. And we then have the cannon in each wing top. They're marked for the interior gun bays, which you can display open. I have said in the unboxing that I didn't want to for a couple of reasons. One, I don't think the detail is really good enough in 1/72. It's impressive that they put it in. I like that they've put it in. However, I'd rather use etch detail or something better for this sort of scale to really make it pop. And also, the D-Day stripes go right over there, and spoilers, they don't give you a cutout for it. So you'd have to cut a hole in the wing and then completely cut up the transfer. So I didn't put it in. Anyway, slight ramble. Don't forget to put in what I assume is a landing light or marker light in the bottom of the wing before gluing that on, because I think the first one that I did, I forgot, and I just replaced it with a bit of clear fix. It wasn't the end of the world, but it's there. Don't forget to do it. And with the bottom wing then onto the fuselage assembly with the wheel wells as part of that, the top of the wings can go on. And it's now really starting to come together and is more or less ready for some blocking of those open bits and some painting. So I'm going to move on to the Spitfire. This is an older tooling, 2009, only 44 parts, and again, currently available as a Series 2 kit, so that's £11.99 if you're in the UK, and we will get to the painting of both of these kits after I have assembled the Spitfire. Straight in with this, and I noticed two things. One is the style of the instructions is notably cruder, notably older, and also they're told you to stick everything to the starboard side of the fuselage. But you see here the port side of the fuselage has extra ribs, basically, and extra support telling you where the parts go. But the instructions tell you to glue it on the starboard side, where there are fewer supports, and I think it would be harder. Not entirely sure why they did that, but this is Airfix from circa 2009, not from circa 2024, and right off the bat it shows. But minor annoyance aside, the interior itself is very simple. As you saw, you've essentially just got the instrument panel on a floor with a backrest, and then you glue the seat into that and stick everything on. It is very, very simple indeed. The exact same pot of paint was used to paint the interior as the Typhoon, which is the Hitaka interior grey-green. Because I'm showing two builds in one video, I didn't think it was necessary to duplicate certain things. So it was the same coat of paint that the Typhoon had. The difference with this aircraft is that it has the propeller blades through the fuselage halves before you stick them together. That's not really how Airfix do things now, but most manufacturers that I know of used to use that style around this time and earlier anyway. It's convenient. It's a little bit of a faff if you're airbrushing and you have lots of detail at the front, but you don't in this. Anyway, onto the wings. You'll see that there is zero detail in the wheel wells, nothing at all. But you will need to stick in these lenses, which are for the belly cameras facing the ground, obviously, hence why they're in the belly. I didn't think they fit quite well, to be honest. And this one here that goes in the fuselage, which is just one side, the port fuselage half, I thought that was a little bit grainy. It didn't look overly clear. So I'm not really happy with any of those, to be honest. And then here is the decal that I mentioned earlier. Again, it's the only interior decal on this kit. I personally found it easier to put the seat in at this point rather than earlier on, so I made sure everything was painted first. And then for the leather, I had a Vallejo leather brown that I painted in both aircraft. I just forgot to show. And then the fuselage halves can be glued together. Also note how I did follow my own advice and use the port side of the fuselage for the interior parts rather than gluing them onto the starboard where there's no sign. Not that I'm angry at that or anything anyway, moving on. Unlike the Typhoon, I actually found the quality of these moulds absolutely fine. I found less flash and imperfections on this than I did the Typhoon. This is also in the newer dark grey plastic, so even though it's the older tooling, it's all the modern formula of plastic, which I very much appreciate. But I didn't have any fit issues at all. It went together perfectly fine, and it's now just a case of sticking all of the bits together. So you've got the fuselage on the wings, and then the tail surfaces, rudder, canopy, all of that can just be thrown together. After all, this kit is only 44 parts, and you really can tell. Some of that is down to the fact that this is a photo reconnaissance Spitfire, so you do not have weapons, you don't have bombs or any really exterior finery. It is just a plane. It's an engine with wings with a camera attached. It is as simple as it could be. And part of that is also it's a much, much cruder, older kit. Even though there are only 4 years between these toolings, I think it's cruel to have this Spitfire in the same box as the Typhoon. Right, they are clearly a very different era, a very different mentality from Airfix. And to have this follow the Typhoon really made me feel sorry for it. I did not enjoy building this on the whole. Now, maybe it will just sound a little bit spoilt, but there are so many good kits available, particularly from Airfix, right? New Airfix kits are really nice. The Typhoon is one of them. It has a basic but more detailed interior than this. It has wheel well detail. It feels like it was engineered with a lot of thought. This feels like a newer version of a 70s Spitfire, if that makes sense. If you know the sort of like the 76 Airfix Mark V Spitfire, something like that. It looks fine. Obviously the detail was raised, it was a different time, but it goes together nicely, you have an okay time. But these days I expect more, and the fact that this is not only in the same box as the Typhoon, which is a joy in every respect, but this is sold normally at the same price. You would pay the same amount of money for this as you would the Typhoon. Honestly, I think it's a bit of a cheek. Anyway, getting a bit distracted, the primer came out. It was just cheap white primer, and this Hataka PRU Blue. This is for brush painting, but this was used to cover the entire aircraft. Thinned with a little bit of the appropriate Hataka thinner. I bought this before I bought an airbrush, so the majority of my acrylic paint collection is actually for brush painting. I chose a white primer because I wanted it to look a little bit faded. However, the blue was a little bit lighter than I was expecting anyway. Honestly, the end result I think is okay. Just wasn't quite what I expected. But anyway, panel by panel, carefully applied on, making it look a little bit patchy. I still like my aircraft to look quite decent. I don't like overly weathered aircraft unless I want to make something particularly weathered. But generally speaking, I just want it to look okay and consistent and not necessarily museum ready, but something similar. Once that was applied, everything was gloss varnished with some Vallejo, and then the first of the decals goes on. Not very many with this, very few on the underside, but in a break from tradition, I did decide to apply the stripes as decals. Usually I'd paint them, but no, this time I decided to go for stripes. It was about this point, which is 10 seconds in, that I was regretting life choices because it just didn't want to go on. Very carefully managed to do it. You can see that they have given you little cutouts. There's 2 for the lenses on the bottom of the fuselage, and there are also 2, one each side at the rear for the registration, because of course in real life these stripes would have been painted with whatever they had to hand, brooms, dustpan and brush, type brush, literally anything, just thick white paint. Obviously if you've got paintbrushes, even better. And at this point you notice I'm covering up the camera in the fuselage. Well done, Airfix, you have badly designed your decals. I find this particularly bizarre given that of all the manufacturers I would trust to do the decals properly, it would be Airfix. Nothing to do with who prints them, they don't design them, they just print to customers' orders. But Airfix usually get things like this spot on. I've had other aircraft, including the Typhoon that I made before, that have all the cutouts in the right places and they fit. Whereas this one was a tiny bit too long. Okay, not the end of the world, you can trim it a little bit, but it just covered up the lens. Just why? And yet a newer tool, I say new, you know what I mean, this is a newer release, sort of, but the Mosquito, the Photo Reconnaissance Mosquito PR16, isn't it? I bought that and was expecting to see decals for the stripes. Doesn't have them. So there's clearly no consistency. Sometimes they want stripes, sometimes they don't. Here they decided, you know what, we're going to give stripes. We're going to do some cutouts, but not all of them. Why not? So now here I am cutting around the lens. It's not going to look as good. By this point, I was just a bit annoyed, especially given that I don't normally waste time with these striped decals. But nope, I gave Airfix the benefit of the doubt, and I was let down. So thanks. More of that later. And in case you're wondering, based on the beginning, this isn't the rant. The rant hasn't started yet. There's more. The actual quality of the decals was absolutely fine. I did use plenty of microset and then microsol for the stripe. However, that's just standard. I'll do that anyway. I just wanted to make sure that it bedded in nicely. The rest of them, so the fin flashes and here the fuselage roundels, they were all absolutely fine. There was the slightest mismatch between the cutout on the invasion stripes for the registration and the registration. So on one side it's a tiny bit lower than the other. I would be happy to put that down to user error rather than design error, but again, as I say, they are a tiny bit too long, so I had to cut around a little bit of excess decal on the lenses underneath anyway. So I'm not sure. We'll just put that one down to maybe user error, maybe not. But anyway, once they were on, everything was blitzed in matte varnish because I don't want it to be too shiny. Then the undercarriage goes on, and boom, that is a Spitfire more or less done. But what about the Typhoon that you'd assembled but hadn't yet painted? I don't hear you cry. Well, don't worry, we're moving on to that. Rather than prime it with white, however, it was actually primed with Tamiya Grey. But it turns out that airbrushing Hataka Medium Sea Grey onto Tamiya Grey primer is incredibly boring to watch. You'd be amazed at how much footage I got of that. So anyway, we'll move on to the top side, which is instead, of course, Ocean Grey. And yeah, you'd be surprised at how boring it is watching back loads of footage of me spraying a dark grey on a slightly paler grey. It turns out the primer is almost exactly in between the darkness of the Ocean Grey and the Medium Sea Grey. Who would have thunk it? Anyway, take my word for it. As you can see here, some paint went onto the model. To find out what happened to my Hataka RAF Dark Green and to see why I'm using Vallejo Model Air, you'd have to look back at my Airfix P40 video. Spoilers, it's in the bin. Anyway, this was sprayed on, not unmasked. I hate masking. I think it looks better when it's masked, but I really didn't want to, so I didn't. I thought, you know what, I'll just do a fine spray and I'll freeball it. So I just went in and very carefully sprayed the green. This paint is thin. I know it's airbrush ready paint. It's going to be thin, but it's really thin. I find it takes several coats to get any sort of decent coverage, and it's a little bit frustrating. There are a few moments where I sprayed it a little bit wonkily, but hey, it was done. I just had something on in Netflix in the corner and went through it. So that's how the green was applied. A decent splattering of Vallejo gloss varnish later, and we're onto the decals, and I decided once again to crack open the microset and try and apply the stripes. There is a reason for this. I will go into that in a separate video, and lo and behold, with one of them applied, oh look, there's an error in the instructions. It says here part 38, or decal 38, and no, that's decal 37. Yeah, the 37 and 38 are mixed up on the instructions because, you know, the wheels can only go one way round. Ah, dear. Anyway, good job I noticed. It's a really obvious thing. It's fine. The fuselage stripes were then also applied. I absolutely hated the fuselage stripes with a passion. I will go into that again separately. We have here a slight bit of bleed on the cannons. It shows what's underneath. And don't forget, of course, to put the yellow leading edge on before you put the stripe. It doesn't tell you to do that. I'm telling you to do that. Just do it. If you want it on, then put it on first. Because if you put the invasion stripes on, the yellow will go over them, which is, of course, wrong. Just like with the Spitfire, there is some overlap, so I'm getting out some little scissors and trimming off the excess decal. However, at least this is on the trailing edge of the wing, where it isn't a massive inconvenience, because you can just do this. Just a nice little trim, and there we go, in the bin with the excess. And then it was gloss varnish to set the work that I'd done, and the rest of the decals were put on. And it is here that I stopped filming the build, and I would like to take a moment to explain why. Those of you allergic to Rant may wish to watch another one of my videos and tune back later. Thank you. Do you ever look at a product and think, this must have been designed on a Friday? Because if you're told, right, you can go home, enjoy yourself for the weekend if you get all of your week's work done, and it's getting to maybe an hour or two before the finish, and you go, I just need to get this out. If I get this out now, I can go down the pub. Because this is not the quality of something like this, right? This is the Airfix that we know and we appreciate. This is crap, and I'm going to explain why. So we're going to start with the instructions. I've made a few notes as I've gone along. So firstly, it says here number 45 squadron. It's not, it's 245 squadron. How do we know that? Well, it says it on the box, it's 245 squadron. So okay, it's a typo, not that big of an issue, but there's more to it than that. So here, you can see the graphics just haven't included the black stripe at the top. Again, if it's on this side, it's not that big an issue. It shows it here. It's fine. It's just, again, a little typo. Well, it extends to the decals themselves. So here it clearly shows there is the registration on the green, because the white would have been painted up to the registration and then sort of a line drawn across it by hand. And it's like that on both sides, grey here and green here. And the stripe matches that here. So you've got a black stripe all the way along because there's only one letter of the registration, whereas here it is two. Well, that's fine, but that's not what they've actually done. You see, they've just done a copy and paste from port side and starboard side. So the black ends here for a two-letter registration, but they've not bothered to do the same for the cutout for the registration here. And on the starboard side, you can clearly see cutout, yep, all fine, but they've missed this bit. Why? Just why have you done that? You'll also notice, although this may be just user error, like I say, I hate doing invasion stripes as decals. It's a bit off-centre and it's a bit split, but that's probably just me and just not liking doing this, but we'll ignore that. Okay, so they've mixed up some of the numbers and they've got a few typos. Fair enough. The data sheet for the Spitfire has obviously been around for a while on the grounds that the kit has been around since 2009. Armament none. Again, just a random typo. Nobody appears to have proofread that in the however long this kit's been available. Although, to be fair, if you look at my SRN1 hovercraft, there's an instruction mistake on that, which has clearly been around for a lot longer. And the modern colour call-out shows the interior of the leg as being blue. It shows the decal correctly, when of course, as we've seen, it is not correct. Yet on the instructions itself, it tells you to paint it interior grey-green, which I think is wrong. I don't know, and this doesn't help because the call-out doesn't match that. So again, which is right? It's inconsistent, and it's not consistent with this. These are the instructions for the 2019 release, and this is the decal sheet for it, and you can see that they have cut out all of the places that are marked on here. So on the port side, you've got no cutout for the registration. Hang on, let me show that a little bit better. There we go. So you've got no cutout for the registration because somebody painted a white slab all the way over it. Fair enough, if that's what the real thing did. But on the starboard side, you've got the cutout for it and then one for the letter C. And oh look, that's exactly what you've got here on the band. You've got one cutout on one side, and that should be, yep, that's the correct side as well. That's the starboard and that's the port. So we know that they can do it. We know they can do it right. So why didn't they? These kits have both been around for more than a decade, and Airfix have been doing invasion stripes for more than a decade, right? They know how to do it. So what gives? Why did they just decide not to do it properly? Now, onto the kits themselves. I will do a little show of them on the turntable as usual whilst doing the outro, and you'll be able to look at the angles. I don't actually have that much negative to say about these. The Typhoon in particular is fantastic. This is a lovely kit. I'd made it before, I knew what to expect. The Spitfire, as I've said, is basic. It is fine if it was sold for less than the Typhoon, and if it was not included in the same bloody box, you'd be none the wiser. But because they are sold together, what you have as a visual reminder is that this is where Airfix was, and this is where they were going. And they've stuck that in the same lovely packaging for you. Oh, how delightful. And another thing that I've just remembered, it wouldn't be so bad if it wasn't different in the blog. I mean, this is it. This is the promotional material from November last year, advertising the kit. They clearly either used a different decal sheet, like a pre-production, or one they've done themselves. It's obviously not the same thing that they then gave to us members. I say gave, sold to us members. What is it your mum says to you when she finds out you've got detention for breaking into the stores at the school and using all the fire extinguishers like jetpacks because you thought Iron Man looked cool? I'm not mad at you. I'm just disappointed. That's what this release embodies. It's a disappointing, lazy attempt at commemorating D-Day. I would expect better from Airfix, but then again, this is the company whose D-Day aircraft set, as of time of recording, which is, 4th of June, still isn't available to buy. So maybe I just had too high an expectation. So that's it, rambling over. Thank you very much for watching. My final comment on this, I feel like I have been harsh, however I feel like it has been earned. I had high expectations for this based on, I don't know, the reputation Airfix have given me and that they want us to believe in. The last club kit was the Meteor. I haven't made it, although I have scanned through the instructions and the decals partly on the back of this, and it looks absolutely fine. The year before that were the two Hawks. They were absolutely fine. Almost all of the releases that I've come across, other than maybe some like quality control issues, have been fine. This does not feel like the standard quality from Airfix that we should have. And the fact that they pooped this out as an 80th anniversary, I don't know, did they have other plans? And then somebody went, why don't we do an 80th anniversary thing? Oh, yeah. But we've only got 2 days to organise it. It will be fine. Don't worry about it. We can get it done. Nobody will notice. Was that it? Or is that too harsh? I don't know. Either way, there is a very simple way of improving this. And so for my rating for the 80th anniversary of D-Day Duo Airfix Club Kit 2024, I give the rating of... Thank you for watching the video. If you liked it, don't forget to like. If you want to subscribe and you haven't already, please do. And the notification bell if you want to be notified when I do a video. You can even become a channel member like the people that have popped up on screen who help with a regular donation towards my waste of time that I'm later going to regret kit fund, exactly like this. And don't forget to let me know in the comments if you agree, if you think I was a bit too harsh. I've calmed down a little bit now. I think I probably was a bit too harsh. But either way, do you have these kits? Do you enjoy both of them individually like I do and think that this is a complete waste of time? Or do you just think I'm an idiot? Stay tuned for another video later this week and another one next week for another anniversary. See if you can guess what it is. Goodbye.